Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with the cattle market summary for the week ending June the 12th, where we did have a little bit of trade last week, and I'm not talking about this past week, but the week before, where it didn't appear by late Friday afternoon that we had any trade, but they had some after hours trade there on Friday, and it was about $4 lower, down to 154 to 155. And then we started out this week, and for some reason the CME cattle futures were up pretty dramatically early in the week, and just all of a sudden that basis that everybody's been worrying about for weeks and weeks, the big distance between cash and futures, was erased, and they were just a few cents apart. So it's amazing how fast that went away. But we got rid of that, but still had good gains on your cash yearlings. They sold firm to $5 higher around the circuit this week. Some spots up to $12 higher, like El Reno, Oklahoma. But still, your index only gained about $3 this week, which is pretty significant. But these yearlings just keep having a slow and steady rally right here. Calves continue to trade uneven. Down in the southeast, where they were best tested, they sold steady to $5 higher. But you get back into the central part of the United States, and they were up and down, but kind of mostly $3 to $5 lower in the central parts, that rain-soaked areas of the southern plains and the lower Midwest, where they just started seeing the first hot weather of this summer, and that kind of saps those calves and really pulls back on the demand on those. But you know, last week's late after hours trade of negotiated sales only added up to be less than 30,000 head of cattle. You equate that with the two sales in central Oklahoma there, Oklahoma National Stockyards and OKC West at El Reno. Those two sales together this week had over 25,000 head of feeder cattle, compared to 30,000 head of negotiated fat cattle trade in the entire United States all of last week. Still, they're gonna slaughter over 450,000 head of slaughter steers and heifers this week. And you think, where did they get all those? They bought less than 30,000 head. Just goes to show you how small the cash trade is, and all the balance of those rest of those fed cattle that are purchased are pretty much purchased off of those few cash sales. There's a few of them based on some other things, just the credit of the carcass or the board or something, but the lion's share of them are going to be priced off that minuscule trade, whatever it is each week. It's hardly ever over 75,000, but somewhere between 30,000 and there. But you know, it doesn't make a lot of sense. And here today and this week, I've been at the Livestock Marketing Association's annual convention, and they really pushed the auction way. And I remember when I was in college 20 years ago, they wondered how longer the cattle auctions were going to continue to go. Well, they're as strong now as they've been for decades. And the reason that is, it's true price discovery. You get people in there that want cattle, and they bid against each other to get the cattle, and then you find out what they're worth. And people have been doing that for centuries, and that's the way it ought to be done. It's not the most efficient way to sell things. You know, you have to truck them in there and truck them out and all that. And that's one reason your video auctions have become so popular. You don't have to necessarily do that until you ship those cattle, but you can still get some true price discovery. But that's the way that things ought to be bought and sold, is find out who wants them and what they're willing to give for them. They're starting to sell a few cattle out in the yearling grass cattle out of the Flint Hills and Osage and places like that for late July and August delivery. A lot of the sellers are wanting 230 based on an 8-weight grass steer. Most of your buyers are not quite willing to give that, especially when the board's sitting, you know, way back from that in the 220s, low 220s for a 750-pound steer. But we're starting to see some competition on some of those video sales this week. They had the Corn Belt Classic, Superior Livestock Auction did. They sold a string of steers in the southern edge of the Flint Hills there, 540 head, weighing 9 1/4, so that's a lot more than what the board is based upon. But a 925-pound steer for late July there at $219.50. Pretty good price, and people will start extrapolating from that, and we'll finally get to what this grass green yearling price is going to be for this summer. On your calves, St. Joe Stockyards had a string of cattle in there from the Bell Farms down by Warrensburg, Missouri. They always have good, thin, black, fancy calves, and they're the best. Maybe a tad wild, but they got off a good condition. They had a load of them, weighed 558, bring 310. We can still get those big record prices if you get the goods there. But this week's fed cattle trade started to develop there on Thursday with steady sales in Kansas at 155. But it didn't last very long. They sold a few like that, and then supposedly only one packer really doing much buying. But then after the board broke so hard on Friday here, down nearly 300 points on fats and feeders, taking back all the gains we saw earlier in the week. They're starting to see some cash trade in Nebraska break loose at 152, which is another fully $2 to $3 lower, and some dress sales from 242 to 244. Check out DV Auction for all your auction needs. We've got a lot of weekly auction sales on there, and production sales also, and you can see this report on the StockExchangeNews.com. So we'll talk to you next week.